VTS is short for visual thinking strategy, but you can also call it image discussion because it's clear and it's close to our educational mission here at MO Museum, which is centered around dialogue. The VTS dialogue method is based on 3 questions. What's going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? What more can you find? It works great when people feel confident that they have something meaningful to say about the art. Unfortunately, that confidence is sometimes lacking. Many of us have been told that art is for experts only. In fact, I think I've studied art history because I thought that was the only way I'd be able to make sense out of art. And that's really a mistake because that's one way to make sense out of art. It's a great way to make sense out of art, but you can also just enjoy the art. The trick is to find something in them that makes sense to you. So what's going on in this picture for you? But even when I say that, people shy away sometimes and they ask, why asking me, aren't you the expert? And so I have to convince them that they can connect to the artworks in their own way. And that is something VTS can fix. We notice an increase in confidence from the first session, but to get the full benefit of the method, you really should practice it often in a series of maybe 10 sessions in a row.
Iš pradžių pasižiūrėjus, net nepamačiau aš tos žuvelės, bet dabar, kai arčiuosi, tai matau.
Yeah. At first you didn't think it was a fish? Why? Because it doesn't really look like a fish.
Taip, neatrodo kaip žuvis, bet...
But you figured out it's a fish.
Taip.
Kaip labiau žiūri, tenais atrodo, kad yra tokia atspindis, kurie tenais žuvies atrodo, kad tenais mumelių ir tokių medžių atspindis.
Oh, you're starting to see a landscape in there.
Taip, atvirkščiai.
Taip, dabar aš irgi pamačiau.
And now you see it too. Anaïs Nin, a French author from the 20th century, said, "We don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we are." And recently, in the last few years, scientists are discovering that that's really the way our brains are wired. We think visually, so we perceive things through our memories. And since we all have different experiences, we will all have different perceptions. And that's why it's good to exchange points of view and to hear as many different interpretations as possible. Through language, we can explain to others what we see. And presumably we're just telling them and explaining, but we're also articulating our thoughts for ourselves and becoming aware of our own biases.
Dar kažkaip atrodo, kad ta mergaitė yra tokia truputį permatoma, atrodo, kad tuo išnyks. Ir taip atrodo, kad kai kuriuose vietose yra tie balti taškeliai ir dar vienai labai neryškiai matosi.
She's been looking too long at the same thing.
Atrodo, kad jinai ją įsiurbė į kažkokią vietą.
The information that they gather from the artwork will stick because they relate their experiences to it. They relate what they see, but also what they hear. And they use many different cognitive skills so that they really connect to the artwork, also with their emotions. And it's helpful when children express emotions in relation to the artwork, because emotions matter and the artwork will become relevant to them. The message in the artwork will have significance for them. As facilitators, we really try to make people feel safe and comfortable at the museum. The rules we set out for facilitation are: we listen to each other, we don't interrupt, and we take care of each other. As facilitators, we follow the same rules, and on top of that, we also learn to paraphrase. And that basically means we just repeat literally what people say, or we try to stay as close as possible to the original comment.
Man kažkaip atrodo, kad ta mergaitė, jinai, pirmiausia, aš galvoju, kad jinai laikė tiesiog mažą akvariumą.
Akvariumą?
Aha, bet dabar kažkaip atrodo, kad tenais yra kažkoks tai ežeras, kai ilgiau pažiūrė, tai atrodo kaip sūkurys. Ir tada atrodo, kad jinai pasilgo kažko ir taip su ilgesiu žiūri į tą ežerą. Jos akys, tada, kai jinai būtų laiminga, tai jinai ir šypsotasi ir kažkaip kitaip, kai jai būtų įdomu, jinai kažkaip arčiau ir kažkaip taip pažiūrėtų. O dabar jinai...
The way she's looking,
taip,
her eyes.
Ja, dabar atrodo, kad jinai tokia žiūri ir daug prasiminimų.
Taip, aš pažiūrėjau ir ten atrodo, kad katinas žiūri, nes ausis. Tai ir galva.
Taip.
Or maybe that's her other hand, because I also see like a thumb sticking up.
Taip.
Taip.
Could it be? Some teachers worry that when children start to use their imagination, they will deviate from the factual knowledge that can be harvested from the picture. All this time we could have been talking about Einstein's relativity theory. What a wasted opportunity. But imagination, and I think Einstein would agree, is a powerful cognitive skill, maybe the most important one. Our survival as a species depends on it, but also individual coping mechanisms are based on imagination. You have to kind of come up with alternative solutions for whatever happens to you. I think it's important to set expectations right. VTS is not an art history lesson, it's not a science lesson, but it could lead to a research project, ideally one that is self-motivated by the students.
Kodėl jinai taip žiūri į tą akvariumą?
Why is she looking at the aquarium for? What's so interesting about that aquarium? What other questions can we come up with why?
Kodėl jinai laiko jį su viena ranka?
So, why is she looking at the aquarium? Why does she only have one hand? The idea is that children find their own truth about a picture, and then almost inevitably they become curious about the artist, the process, the cultural context, who made this, why, and how. The name of the artist is Birute Zokaitita. So it's a girl. Does that change anything for you? It does? Why?
Taip, dėl to, nes kartais taip būna, kad kai berniukai ar vyrai, jie aišku daug kitaip galvoja apie negu mergaitės ir moterys.
It could be. You kind of guessed already the title when you were talking about the fish. Remember? This is the first thing you noticed, actually. You said, like, girl looking at a fish. I think that's the first thing you said.
Jo, ir parašytas.
And it's written over there. Girl looking at a fish. But it has two titles. And the first part of the title is kind of a complicated title. Can you read it?
Stankėjusio laiko ir erdvės spąstai.
What does that mean?
Kad taip, kai taip trumpai pasižiūri, matai vieną kažką ir kai ilgiau pasižiūri, tai gali visiškai kažką gal kito pamatyti.
If you look for a long time at something, your perception changes. You start to see it differently. Is that what happened to you when you were sitting here for a long time? You started to see things differently?
Taip.
Yeah. Solving image puzzles is really like a superpower. once children become skilled at doing VTS with artworks, they can start to transfer these skills to other areas of interest, like what's going on in this math problem, or what's going on in this friendship. There's a medical school in Boston who trains their staff to zoom out of their medical handbooks and ask what's going on in this patient. As educators too, we should sometimes look past what we know about our subject materials that we're trying to convey and simply look at the child, like what's going on with this child, what's going on with this class group. As facilitators, we learn to listen very carefully. We listen to what children say, but we also listen to what they don't say. Sometimes their body language speaks volumes. Some of the kids that come in here are so shy. Listening is hard work. I'm also a mother, and sometimes at work I'm too busy or distracted to really listen to what my own children are telling me. And so here at MO Museum I get plenty of practice doing active listening. If there isn't a lot of verbal exchange, sometimes it's tempting to take over the dialogue. That's why I really try to stick to the 3 VTS questions, because once I start deviating from them, I know that I'm on the verge of limiting the scope. You ask questions like, have you ever heard of Einstein? Then that's the end of your dialogue. You might still get an answer like yes or no. But if you ask a question like, what's going on in this picture, you'll get a lot more interesting answers, or you might get silence. And that's not the worst thing that can happen. And we're so worried that children won't learn anything, but they will. And in the worst case scenario, they'll just learn to be comfortable with silence.